Part 52. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 513. Looking at the pen and ink on the table, Li Jinghua sighed and asked, "Should we write this letter or not?" "Write," Mu Yangling said firmly, "and write now." Li Jinghua frowned slightly, and Mu Yangling smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, elder brother is a minister, and it is his duty to guard Dazhu. The emperor didn't ask him to do unrighteous things, why don't we write about it? But being detained in the palace and being forced to write these letters is unavoidable. Let's just come to the palace to play for free for a while." Mu Yangling spread out the paper and said, "Sister-in-law, please write more interesting stories about Xiaobao, so that even though the elder brother didn't see Xiaobao, he would treat it as if he read the letter I see." Li Jinghua started to write the letter, and asked in a low voice, "Can Mrsun know how to write?" "I don't know if she will, but Mrsun will definitely write it." Mu Yangling frowned slightly. In fact, she disapproved of the confrontation between the old lady Yuan and the emperor and queen, which not only made the emperor more suspicious of the Yuan family. It also made their situation more dangerous, including General Yuan, who was far away at the border. No matter how displeased the emperor is in Mu Yangling's heart, she will never violate his bottom line on the face of it at this time, because that is the rhythm of courting death. She has a husband, a son, parents, younger siblings, and she has lived long enough. Only then will the rhythm of disobedience or rebellion be revealed at the moment when the imperial power is supreme. The prestige and status of the Yuan family is too lofty, and General Yuan holds an army of 260,000. If he obeys orders, the emperor may not be so suspicious. The key is that General Yuan often does not obey orders from the court. Well, Mu Yangling admitted that the emperor's orders were too detrimental to the people of Dazhu and his own army. It seemed reasonable for a general to disobey orders, but from the emperor's point of view, this was definitely a threat. It can be seen from this that the most direct and effective way to reduce Qi Xiuyuan's threat in the emperor's mind and protect Qi Xiuyuan, them and their children, is to tell the emperor with actions that their Qi family is not a threat. It is at his command. Although heroes are admirable, it is more effective to pretend to be pigs and eat tigers. Li Jinghua's letter to Qi Xiuyuan wrote about Xiaobao's daily life as usual, and then finally wrote a few words asking him to serve the court at the border, take care of his health, and so on, before closing. She showed the letter to Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling scanned it and sealed it when he saw that there was no problem. Li Jinghua hurriedly stopped her and said, "Would you like to write a few more words?" The more Li Jinghua thought about it, the more uneasy she felt, feeling that the letter did not reveal any information, and wondered if Qi Xiuyuan would read the letter because of the information he had. Less than others and delayed news. But it seems a little bad for a sister-in-law to write a letter to her uncle, and Li Jinghua regretted it after finishing speaking. Mu Yangling propped his chin and thought for a while, then said, "This is fine." Mu Yangling picked up a pen and wrote to Qi Xiuyuan, but what he said was about Qi Heiran. Qi Heiran hadn't heard from him for a month, and she was anxious, hoping that he could send someone to Jinghu South Road to look for it, or talk to the emperor. Let him send a team to find Qi Heiran. Now Jingnan South Road is in chaos, especially if he is in danger. His words are innocent and ignorant of world affairs. But she pretended to understand and said, "The imperial court has 800,000 troops, General Yuan has 260,000 troops, Guanzhong also has 400,000 troops, not counting the 100,000 forbidden troops guarding Linan City. You're sending a battalion to rescue Fourth Master shouldn't have much impact on the battle situation." He also said that Xiaoxiang is still young, not even 100 days old, and he has never even seen his father, so he has played enough pity and family cards. Li Jinghua was stunned watching from the side, wondering why Mu Yangling's painting style suddenly became so naive and unreasonable. However, Mu Yangling wrote more and more smoothly, and finally almost forced Qi Xiuyuan to swear that he must send someone to rescue Qi Heiran. After the letter was dry, She put the letter together with Li Jinghua's and sealed it in an envelope. Mu Yangling's eyes flashed, and she said softly, "Sister-in-law, don't worry, not only eldest brother and fourth master, but also us will be safe." Li Jinghua felt uneasy for no reason. In the afternoon, a female officer came to get the letter. Li Jinghua took a look at Mu Yangling and handed the letter to her. The female officer didn't expect things to go so smoothly. Her face turned into a flower, and she comforted, "Don't worry, MRSG, send this letter to the border quickly, and it will arrive in 7 days, and you should receive a reply in half a month." Li Jinghua thanked with a smile. The letters from the Qi family were the most straightforward ones, and the letters from the Yuan family were not finished until the sun was about to set, while the other 3 families saw that the Yuan family had written them, so they also wrote them one after another. The emperor read all the letters, finally knocked on Yuan's letter, and said in a moody way, "Send it." The Yuan family's letter was too simple, it just reported that it was safe, and then simply mentioned a sentence to let General Yuan guard the border with peace of mind. Although the content met the emperor's requirements, anyone could see that the Yuan family was in a bad mood. A few words are a confrontation with the emperor. The emperor's face was a little ugly, and he picked up the Qi family's copy after reading the letters from the other 3 families. The reason why the Qi family's letter was ranked last was because this letter was the thickest, and it felt like a thick stack when he got it. There were obviously 2 letters in it. The emperor read the thinner one first. There were only 3 sheets of paper written by MRSG and LI. Most of them were about some interesting stories about children. Safety. The emperor's mood became a little smoother, so it looked like a family letter. Writing about children could arouse Qi Ziyuan's fatherly love and bind him better. The emperor was very satisfied with Qi Li's knowledge of current affairs. After opening another letter with 6 sheets of paper, the emperor twitched the corner of his mouth. If he didn't know that Mu Shi was Qi Heiran's wife, he would have thought it was a mess just judging by the thickness of the letter. After opening the letter, the emperor no longer doubted that this person was indeed Qi Heiran's wife, because she wrote about how dangerous and difficult Qi Heiran was on South Jingnan Road, as if she had seen it with her own eyes. Qi Ziyuan hurriedly sent someone to rescue him. The queen saw it from the side and said with a smile, "This Mu family is very simple." After entering the palace, he seldom goes out, and he rarely talks when he goes out. Unexpectedly, he is a bit domineering in private. "I'm afraid it was bound by the Qi Li family." The emperor refolded the letter lightly. The queen thought so too. The 2 sisters-in-law seemed to get along pretty well, and when they were away, MRS Mu also acted according to MRS Li's wishes. "Then do you want to withhold this half of the letter? So as not to make General Qi feel uneasy." The emperor shook his head. "Why do you want to detain it? Although the Mu family is a bit messy, Qi Ziyuan loves his younger brother very much, and maybe he will really ask me to send someone to Jing South Road to find someone for him. When he has something to ask me, you can also let him keep General Yuan in check in the north. He only has 150,000 people in his hands, which is very different from Yuan's army." "Can he be restrained?" the queen asked worriedly. The emperor smiled and said, "Don't worry, if the Yuan family's army really wants to rebel, even if Qi Ziyuan's army can't stop it, it's okay to delay for a while, so just send the letter to them." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 514. Poor emperor, he didn't know that it was not General Yuan, but Qi Ziyuan who had turned his back on him. Although General Yuan was arrogant and often kept the emperor's order, but this person only wanted to recover the rivers and mountains, serve the court, and leave his name in history, and he had no intention of rebelling at all. But the young and energetic Qi Ziyuan has his own ambitions. He is weak and willing to listen to the emperor's orders, but he has been preparing for rebellion a few years ago. When the letter was sent to the generals, everyone was angry at first, and then helpless. Generals who hold military power abroad want to keep their family members in the capital. They can understand this, because they are afraid that they will do the same, because they are worried, but it is too much to recruit them into the palace. How distrustful is this? They charged at the front line for the country and the king, but in the end they ended up with such a result. But now the old lady, his wife, and children are in the hands of the emperor. Even if they are angry in their hearts, there is nothing they can do. General Yuan was also angry. His old lady is over 60, and what she fears most at this age is shock and jolts. What does the emperor want to do? But no matter how angry he was, now that the golden soldiers were pressing down on the situation, he had to put all his body and mind into the battle. But after the grief in his heart was suppressed to the extreme, it was inevitable that he would feel resentment. For the first time, General Yuan expressed his dissatisfaction with the emperor's behavior in person. But after Qi Ziyuan received the letter, he read Li Jinghua's letter back and forth twice, and then stroked the letter paper describing Xiaobao with a smile on his face, with tenderness in his eyes. Rong Xian comforted him and said, "It's fine for the child to stay in the palace. Didn't Heiran say that Xixia soldiers had sneaked into Dazhu? If those people sneaked into Linen City, they would be the biggest threat to the families of the generals. They are in the palace. Even though he is a hostage, his safety is more assured." Qi Ziyuan nodded, "I know. Have you read Aling's letter?" Rong Xian smiled, nodded, and said, "Look, fourth grandma is very alert. This is telling us that this is not the right time." Qi Ziyuan suppressed the restlessness in his heart and nodded. He and Rong Xian were both moved before, because this is really a rare opportunity, and it was the news that his family members entered the palace as hostages from the middle of Beijing that made Qi Ziyuan calm down. Although he was angry with the emperor in his heart, he had no intention of raising trouble anymore. At this time, although Qi Ziyuan wanted to rebel, he didn't have to have the supreme right, so he could still give it up when his wife, children, and family members were in danger. If Yuan Hui hadn't sworn at the beginning that he would be the next generation of emperor and a Ming Jun, Qi Ziyuan probably wouldn't have thought that way. Even though he was dissatisfied with Dezhou, in the end he would have to follow the old path of General Yuan. To be in charge of the military power, and then to be named a marquis, and to be named as a wife and son, what you are after is nothing more than leaving a name in history. It is also because he is a hidden ambition that was hooked out by others, so this ambition is not very strong. When he needs to make a choice, although it is difficult and painful, he will still choose his family. Fortunately, Mu Yangling's letter came very soon. Her letter was straightforward, naive, and vexatious, but Qi Ziyuan and Rong Xian, who were familiar with her temperament and way of thinking, quickly realized that Mu Yangling let them wait and see the changes, waiting to reap the benefits of the fisherman. Qi Ziyuan feels better now. Rong Xian watched his pain from the sidelines until he made a choice. Seeing him choose his family, Rong Xian was both relieved and disappointed. The disappointment lies in his lack of domineering, but the relief is because he cares about his family, and it is the Qi Ziyuan he knew before. The flesh and blood Qi Ziyuan may not go far enough, but it is enough for him to follow with confidence. Qi Ziyuan put Li Jinghua's letter aside, read Mu Yangling's letter again, and sighed, "I wonder if there will be such a good opportunity in the future." Rong Xian hesitated and said, "If our dead soldiers steal people out of the palace?" Qi Ziyuan shook his head, "It's too difficult to leave the palace with all beards and tails. As Aling said, we are only focused on resisting the golden soldiers. Let's obey the emperor's order. Let him relax his vigilance first, and we will plan this matter later." Qi Ziyuan said with a smile when he said this, "That boy Heiran always says that Aling's sixth senses are very accurate. She is a bystander. Maybe there will be a better opportunity if you wait." Rong Xian nodded, "I'm afraid that an incident at this time will become the target of public criticism. General Yuan's 260,000 troops are right next door, and the kingdom of Jinn is also attacking us. If an incident occurs at this time, the common people will not understand. Thinking about it this way, it seems that giving up this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity is not so uncomfortable. Chi Xiuyuan was shocked, and said with a smile, "In that case, let's fight against the Jin soldiers wholeheartedly. Lost the city and lost the land like before? That's really embarrassing to lose to Grandma's house. Where is the fourth master? I'm not too worried about that kid. There are mountains and forests everywhere on Jingnan South Road, and as long as he enters the mountains and forests, there will be few opponents. Escape is even better. However, the posture that should be done is still to be done. Since Aling specially wrote if you send a letter asking for help, then I will ask the emperor to send a team of troops to support him, so that the emperor can feel at ease." Rongxian nodded with a smile, "Then I'll prepare the scriptures now." Qi Xiuyuan nodded, and after they left, he picked up Li Jinghua's letter to read about his son's interesting stories. Maybe he should consider telling Li Jinghua about this. After all, it is his wife. If she has her support, even if he can't, no matter how much help you add to him, at least it can make him feel more at ease. At least she knows what can be done and what cannot be done. Qi Xiuyuan considered whether to ask Mu Yangling to tell Li Jinghua to do her ideological work. Fortunately, they have a son now, so Li Jinghua probably won't object. Qi Xiuyuan picked up the pen and thought for a long time before writing, because these letters would definitely be inspected by the emperor, so he didn't dare to write clearly, just to let Li Jinghua feel at ease. Take good care of the children, take good care of Heiran's sister-in-law and nephew, and let her. There are many things to discuss with Mu Yangling, and he is kind. And when it came to Mu Yangling, Qi Xiuyuan asked her to tell Mu Yangling, saying that he had already offered the emperor to send someone to find Qi Heiran, so that she would not have to worry too much, and take the child with peace of mind, and read more books if she has nothing to do. Qi Xiuyuan used a few specific words for things like going out and causing trouble. This was what they had agreed upon at the beginning. He wrote it like this, which showed that he wanted to tell Li Jinghua about it. As Mu Yang, who is closest to Li Jinghua, Ling is the best conveyor. Qi Xiuyuan hinted to Mu Yangling that this matter is not urgent, you can discuss it after they leave the palace, just file it with her first, don't forget that she can also reveal it to Li Jinghua slowly. In short, don't show any clues or strange things outside. It is good. The letter is still handed over to the emperor's messenger to take it away, and it is also very good that it is accompanied by Qi Xiuyuan's memorial. At least the speed of the letter exchange is much faster. Not everyone can use the 800-mile express, and everyone can afford it. At this time, Qi Heiran, who was missed by Qi Xiuyuan and Mu Yangling, was sitting on a burly man in embarrassment. Seeing his fierce eyes, Qi Heiran simply raised his buttocks and sat down fiercely, hitting the other person's stomach. The man spat out a mouthful of blood in a wow. Qi Heiran patted his face with his big hand and said, "I don't have time to waste it for you, so I will ask you again, whether to recruit or not." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 515. Qi Heiran chased after him for almost a month and finally caught him, but even so, he only caught one team of Xixia soldiers, that is, the team from Tukan, and the other two teams never disappeared. Even Qi Heiran, the people who were sent out, disappeared without a trace, and it is not known whether they were discovered, surrounded by bandits, or escaped by themselves. The order collapsed, and the whole Zhou dynasty was in chaos. If Qi Heiran hadn't suppressed him, all the soldiers under his hands would probably have run away. Pressing the Xixia general under him, he punched down and knocked out two of his teeth, and asked viciously, "Say, where are your other two teams planning to go and what are they doing?" General Xixia glared at Qi Heiran viciously, without speaking, Chi Heiran sneered, touched him with his hands, and then lowered his chin, then got up, kicked the people under him and said to his companions, I originally wanted to relax, but now it seems impossible. They will be taken back, interrogated one by one, and let them all taste the torture tools in the prison. General, that's the territory of Head Lu and the others. It's not appropriate to take them back. Can these people still fall into their hands when they go back? Chi Heiran said confidently, don't worry, Master Lu and Master Lin understand the righteousness and will not stop them. Because of the chaos on South Jingnan Road, Lu Dehei and Lin Man were naturally not satisfied with staying in Huayuan County, so they took advantage of the chaos and the collapse of the bandit alliance to run out with their people, occupying 3 counties in one go. Chi Heiran, who was following them, wanted to stop them at first, but he let them go after hearing that 11 Xia and Jingguo were invading and the bandit general was assassinated and killed, but he did not allow Lu Dehei and Lin Man to kill too much. Most of the guards in the county are yamen servants. The county towns that were captured in the past, let alone the yamen servants, the county magistrate and other officials will definitely be purged, but it may be because of Chi Heiran's feelings that Lu Dehei and Lin Man will no longer take the initiative to slaughter official. It's okay to meet upright officials and some honest officials. Lu Dehei and Lin Man will let them continue to hold their original positions. Even if Lu Dehei and Lin Man don't do anything, the people below can't let it go. If one of them doesn't pay attention, they will die when they charge or ransack their homes. Fortunately, most of the family members of those officials survived. Chi Heiran didn't care about this, and Lu Dehei and Lin Man didn't stop the people below from doing anything when they saw this. Chi Heiran's identity was well hidden. Except for Lu Dehei, Lin Man, and a few people around them, no one knew that he was an official of the imperial court, and he hardly participated in the affairs of Lu Dehei and Lin Man. With people running outside, both Lu Dehei and Lin Man knew that he was looking for Xixia soldiers. Originally thought that he would leave soon, but who knew that the directions on the road coincided miraculously, so the two of them could only continue to endure a court official chasing after them. Now, Chi Heiran went out for 2 days, but when he came back, he took a dozen Xixia prisoners. Naturally, Lu Dehei wanted to ask, and when he learned that it was the Xixia soldiers they had been chasing, he asked very interestedly, didn't it mean that there were 5 prisoners, about 100 people? Why are there only a dozen or so? When we ran into them, there were only about 100 of them, and they were still exhausted. I set up an ambush and killed them. It was enough to keep a dozen prisoners for interrogation. If there were too many, it would be difficult to escort them. Lu Dehei shuddered, thought for a while and asked, didn't you advise us not to kill the prisoners? Chi Heiran asked curiously, how can this be the same? Those are from Das Hu, and these are Xixia soldiers. Besides, the Lord did not kill the prisoners, but there are not so many prisoners. They were fighting at that time, isn't it normal for people to die? If it wasn't for getting more information and opening their mouths easily, he didn't even want to capture these 10 people, so he killed them directly. It's a pity that the leader's mouth seems a little hard. In order to make more breakthroughs, he can only keep some more prisoners. Chi Heiran borrowed the interrogation from the prison, and Lu Dehei went to visit with great interest, wanting to see Chi Heiran's interrogation methods. But when he followed him to the prison, he saw Chi Heiran turned around and ordered the prison guard who was in charge of punishment to be found and handed over to him for interrogation. As long as you don't kill him. Chi Heiran left a battalion chief to assist in the interrogation. Turned around and went out. Lu Dehei turned his head to look at those people, and hurriedly followed them out. Why don't you ask yourself? My lord is not good at this. What can I ask? I have used the methods I know before, and they are useless. If you try harder, you will die. Let the prison do it. They have various and cruel methods. They should be able to do it, I can ask. Lu Dehei lowered his eyes, then raised his eyes and smiled. You are honest, You don't do it if you know you can't, and you can say it if you don't know it. Chi Heiran said inexplicably, I'm a general, as long as I can lead troops to fight, it's fine. Those who know how to do these things can be done by people who know how to do these things. As long as the results are good, I can specialize in arts. How can I know everything? Lu Dehe recited twice there is a specialization in art, and sighed, those who have studied are different. Lu has been educated. Chi Heiran is very upset that Lu Dehe can attribute everything to reading, which depends on how obsessed he is with reading. Chi Heiran waved his hand and said, okay, I'll go back and wash up first. After running for 2 days, his body was dirty and tired, and his stomach was still hungry, so he really didn't have the time to talk nonsense with Lu Dehe. But Lu Dehe stopped him with a smile, and said, Brother Chi, since this man has entered my prison, let the people under me help him. Don't worry, they will never stop you from interrogating him. How to do it or how to do it, my people are just helping to pass a whip or something. Chi Heiran knew that he also wanted to get the news. Chi Heiran originally wanted to tell them that he would get their help to deal with Zixia together, so he nodded and agreed without thinking. Lu Dehe smiled slightly, turned around and asked his confidants to go to the prison to assist in the interrogation, making sure to write down their questions and answers one by one. Lin Man was waiting for him at Lu Dehe's house. When he saw him coming back, he raised his eyelids and looked at him, and asked, Brother, do we really want Chi Heiran to follow? Lu Dehe and Lin Man were in 2 teams before, but they came together because of the encirclement and suppression of Chi Heiran, but they found that their temperaments were quite compatible, and now that the outside is too chaotic, they are too weak to be separated, but they are united, but one is not satisfied with the other. So now the 2 sides are big and belong to the state of alliance. Although there are struggles underneath, they are generally in peace. But it seems very strange to include Chi Heiran in the alliance, because they are all bandits, and Chi Heiran is an official, and the situation was not good for them before. Chi Heiran staying here is their way of retreat. Lin Man is naturally happy treat him as a VIP, but now the situation is on their side, and the Dezhou regime is in jeopardy. Would it be too stupid for them to let Chi Heiran follow? The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 516. Lu Dehe smiled, pulled Lin Man into the room, and lowered his voice, Brother Lin, let me ask you, do you think Dezhou can hold on this time? Lin Man bowed his head in thought, and said after a while, it's hard to say, Daz who has 800,000 troops. Lu Dehe curled his lips, so what about 800,000 yuan? There are strong enemies outside and rebellion inside, so they still have to die, not to mention that those generals may not have selfish intentions. If we don't talk about others, let's talk about Chi Heiran. Isn't this group of bandits mixed together with Hilele? Although it is to catch Zixia soldiers, if he is loyal to the emperor and patriotic, he should kill us, or get close to the court and let people surround us, but you look at most of them at the end of the month, he never thought of sending news to the imperial army. Lin Man lowered his voice and said, you mean, Chi Heiran wants to rebel? Lu Dehe sighed and said, the world is in chaos, whoever is the emperor depends on his own ability. If it was before, brother, I might also become a king, but last time I fought with Chi Heiran, and only then did I know that brother is only the 2 in this chaotic world. I don't know if I can save my life, let alone become a great king. If so, it's better to find a wise master, maybe I can be a founding hero or something. Lin Man looked at him in a daze, is Dezhou really going to perish? The demise of a country feels so unreal. I think it's almost there. Then you've taken a fancy to Chi Heiran, Lin Man struggled, he doesn't look like a wise master. Although he is a little better at fighting, he is like a child in other respects. Lu Dehe lowered his voice and said, Chi Heiran doesn't look like that, what do you think of his elder brother? Lin Man stared at him with wide eyes. Chi Xiuyuan grew up as a young man, and he is no different than General Yuan. He now has more than 100,000 troops under his command. If he really wants to turn against him, he must have a place in this great Zhou. Lin Man couldn't help swallowing. Chi Xiuyuan wants to rebel? Did you hear what Chi Heiran said? Lu Dehei glanced at him like an idiot, and said, Chi Heiran will tell me this? Am I guessing? Now let's lay a solid foundation for our relationship with Chi Heiran. If Chi Xiuyuan rebels in the future, we will follow. If he doesn't rebel, then there will be a master in the future, and we will vote again. Lin Man looked at him speechlessly. You cast your net too wide, right? How many boats do you have to step on? Will the Ming Lord know it and bear it? Only the two of us know about this. Who else do you want to tell? Lin Man thought about it, and nodded in agreement. After 3 days of unremitting efforts in the prison, they finally pried open the mouths of several people, and they also knew about Xixia's plan. They came here to find a way to cause internal chaos in the Great Zhou dynasty and expand the war between the Great Zhou court and the bandits. They pretended to be the imperial army to encircle and suppress many bandits, and they all fought a battle to stir up their anger and leave. They also shot and killed the bandit general not long ago. It was luck to say that they were hiding in a cave. There was an army passing by at the foot of the mountain. They probed out and found that it was the main force of the imperial army. Of course they would not let go of such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but because of this, they were hunted down and suffered heavy losses. The original team of 500 people was reduced to just over 100, and they were still exhausted and remnant soldiers. Was caught by Chi Heiran. As for the other two teams, the task of one team is to go out of Jingnan South Road and enter Jiangnan, and spread the flames of war to the Jiangnan area, while the other team is the strongest. Kill. As long as these family members die, those generals will definitely turn against Dezhou, and Dezhou will be more chaotic at that time, and they Xixia will definitely be able to occupy half of Dezhou. Why is it half and not all? It is because they have made an agreement with Jingguo this time. They attack each other, and how much they occupy is their own. The military strength of the kingdom of Jin is not weaker than them, it is estimated to be half of them. Although it is only half, but this is the bustling Great Zhou, and half is enough to support the Xixia kingdom. After getting the confession, Chi Heiran's expression changed. He wondered what happened to his wife and children in Beijing. Chi Heiran got the confession and knew the whereabouts of Xixia soldiers, so he was in no mood to stay with Lu Dehei any longer. After thinking about it, he tried to persuade them, this road is the only way Xixia goes to Linan. Let's go north, anyway, the danger is not too great. After thinking for a while, he said, it's not an option for you to always be bandits. If you don't dislike it, you might as well follow me. I will recruit you and turn around to intercede with the emperor. Das who is now chaos, the emperor will definitely agree. Lin Man looked at Lu Dehei, but Lu Dehei shook his head, and said half tentatively, if I just hang out with you, I might agree, but let's forget about following the emperor of Das who, it's too useless. Chi Heiran just bowed his head and pondered for a moment, then nodded, expressing that he understood, and did not make any promises, and Lu Dehei did not continue this topic anymore. Chi Heiran brought out the Xixia general, and executed all the others in private. He took such a captive eastward and westward to Linan city, avoiding bandits along the way, but the human tragedies were everywhere. However, the more you drive to Linan city, the more you can see the loneliness of the fleeing people along the way. Chi Heiran, who considers himself hard-hearted, couldn't help but his eyes were red. When the group returned to Linan city, they all looked like men. The soldiers guarding the city saw a group of people in ragged clothes. Sharp, he must be a beggar and drive people out. No, beggars are better than these people. Is there any major event happening in the city? After Chi Heiran verified his identity, his first question was to ask this. Isn't the chaos of the Great Zhou a major event? The gatekeeper asked blankly. I'm asking if the family members in Linen City, such as General Yuan's mansion, General Qi's mansion and other generals' mansions are safe and sound. The gatekeeper looked at Qi Heiran, remembering the house he had reported just now, as if he said his name was Qi Heiran, and there was some sympathy in his eyes. Qi Heiran couldn't help trembling when he saw this, his face turned pale, and he stared at that soldier. The gatekeeper shuddered, and quickly comforted him, "Don't worry, General, although it may be inconvenient for the officials and family members to enter the palace, this is because the Holy Majesty wants to protect them, so you have to be considerate." "You mean the Emperor brought the family members of several generals into the palace?" The gatekeeper nodded, "Yes, I will be called into the palace as soon as there is a war." Qi Heiran let out a big breath, his eyes were slightly wet. Fei Bai stepped forward to hold his arm, and said in a low voice, "Fourth Master, the fourth Grandma and the third young Master are sure to be safe and sound. Don't worry, we will go to the city and go home. After washing up, I will go to the palace to see you." Fei Bai tightly grasped Qi Heiran's arm, supporting his whole body. Qi Heiran stood limply for a while, only then realized that his hands were trembling slightly. Thinking that he was actually frightened by a soldier's eyes, Qi Heiran gave the other party a stern look, and leaned on Fei Bai to enter the city. More than 60 ragged soldiers followed into the city carrying a sack. Qi Heiran originally wanted to go back to the Qi mansion directly, to have a meal first, take a bath or something, but before he could go far, the Emperor's envoy stopped his way and directly brought Qi Heiran and others into the palace. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 517. Qi Heiran was brought directly to the Emperor. Several ministers were discussing government affairs with the Emperor, and when they saw Qi Heiran who was brought in, they all opened their mouths. One of the officials was the first to react, and shouted, "General Qi, you are disrespectful in front of the palace, how courageous you are." Qi Heiran rolled his eyes, first knelt down to greet the Emperor, and then replied, "Your Majesty, I didn't want to lose my manners in front of the palace. It was the servant who brought me here and said that you want to see me immediately, so I don't have time to wash up changing clothes." The Emperor was also shocked by Qi Heiran's image. He looked at Qi Heiran's thin face sympathetically, nodded and said, "It is indeed an order from me. No wonder Qi Iking, I also want to know some news about Jingnan South Road." After finishing speaking, she looked at Qi Heiran with pity and said, "Qi Iking has suffered during this time. This is what I should do." Qi Heiran acted righteously. Everyone couldn't help giving him a high look. Qi Heiran's image at this time was really too miserable. His clothes were torn, and they were so dirty that they lost their original color. There are still some wounds on the skin that will not be treated in the future. It is really not a miserable that can be described. The most important thing is that Qi Heiran's overall aura is much sharper than that of the previous striker, and it looks like he has struggled out of the sea of blood. After all, the image of the appeal can be faked, but the momentum cannot be faked. Moreover, Qi Heiran is not a little thinner than before he left Beijing. Just when the Emperor and all the ministers took pity on Qi Heiran's stomach started to growl. Qi Heiran looked a little embarrassed, and explained, "Your Majesty, the cakes before your case are too delicious." Otherwise, he wouldn't bark no matter how hungry he was. Now it was the Emperor's turn to be slightly embarrassed. He signaled his servant to bring down the cakes on the table to Qi Heiran, and said, "Qi Iking, let's eat something first. I will ask questions after I finish eating." "It's okay, the Emperor can ask, and the minister can answer while eating." Although it was somewhat indecent, the Emperor urgently needed to know the more specific situation of Jing South Road, so he ignored it. The news they got was from the front-line generals through letters or messengers, and the news was limited. Qi Heiran came back from Jingnan South Road, and he was a general, so there should be more news. There is indeed a lot of news about Qi Heiran. After all, he lives with the bandits, Chi Heiran concealed the news about Lu Dehe and Lin Man, and told the emperor everything else, including the ones they caught. Xixia captives and confessions obtained. After talking for a long time, Chi Heiran said everything he could say. Seeing the emperor bowed his head to discuss matters with several ministers, Chi Heiran moved his buttocks, but he still couldn't help saying, "Your Majesty, I heard that my sister-in-law and the Mu family are both here in the palace, can you allow me to see them? There is also the son of the minister, since he was born, the minister has not seen it yet." The emperor's face darkened slightly, and then he quickly smiled and said, "It's human nature and it's okay, but the queen's health hasn't improved, so I'm afraid the officials and family will stay in the palace for a while." Chi Heiran knew that the emperor was worried that he would take Mu Yangling and the others out of the palace, so he hurriedly said, "The minister is asking the emperor to let Mu and the others stay in the palace for a while, and now there are still 2 teams of Xixia soldiers who have no news and don't know about them. Did you sneak into Linen City? Naturally, it is safer for the families of the generals to stay in the palace." Chi Heiran licked his face and said, "Although I am only a 4th-rank young general, I still rub my elder brother's light, let me Mrs. Mu and the child also stayed in the palace, just to relieve the boredom of sister-in-law and nephew." The emperor was taken aback for a moment, and then remembered the confession of Xixia soldiers mentioned by Chi Heiran. He immediately felt happy, nodded with a smile and said, okay, then let them stay for a while longer. The generals are leading troops to fight outside and charge into battle. All I can do is to protect the safety of their families." The ministers below lowered their eyes, feeling a little sarcastic in their hearts, but they had to admit that the emperor was lucky. Who knew that Xixia would send people to kill the family members of several generals? It's just a blind cat meeting a dead mouse. But it is undeniable that everyone is relieved. After all, with this matter, the conflict between the emperor and the generals will be greatly weakened, which is very good for the unification of the Great Zhou. This incident made the emperor like Chi Heiran even more, and with a big wave of his hand, he agreed to let Chi Heiran go to the harem to meet his wife and children, as long as he left before the palace gate was locked. Chi Heiran received this grace, willingly kowtowed 3 times to the emperor, and happily followed the servant to Wanking Palace. Chi Heiran's attire attracted many people's attention along the way, but he ignored it all the way, and followed the servant directly to Wanking Palace. Mu Yangling was holding the little bear to let him look at the flowers in the yard. Now he can straighten his neck, being held by Mu Yangling, he turned his head around and turned to the gate of the yard. He lay on his mother's shoulder and immediately met the eyes of the man at the door. Little Xiong opened his round eyes and looked at the man curiously. Seeing that his eyes were also staring wide, Little Xiong probably saw someone with such wide eyes for the first time, so he put his little hand on his mouth and smiled cheerfully. "When I got up, I even said ag." Mu Yangling held him in his arms, nodded his nose and said, "Why are you so happy all day? You look like a fool." "Who said master's child looks like a fool? He's obviously so smart." An unhappy voice sounded behind him. Mu Yangling froze and froze for a long time before turning back to look at Chi Heiran in disbelief. Chi Heiran stared closely at the child in Mu Yangling's arms. Seeing that his wife hadn't spoken for a long time, he managed to pay some attention to her. Seeing her wide-eyed staring at him in disbelief, he stretched out his hand and waved it in front of her. With a wave, "Are you stupid? You are obviously stupid, and you still say that the son of the master is stupid." Mu Yangling looked Chi Heiran up and down with red eyes, and saw that all the baby fat on his face was gone, so he reached out and touched his arms and chest. His eyes became even redder. "Why did you lose so much weight?" Chi Heiran was a little flustered. "Why are you crying? Master isn't thin at all, it's just that he's grown stronger and his flesh has become leaner." Chi Heiran put his arms around his wife and children, patted her on the back, and coaxed in a low voice, "Don't cry, this is in the palace. Mu Yangling blinked the tears from his eyes, moved his son closer to him, and said, "Look, this is your son." Chi Heiran and his son's big eyes met their small eyes, and they looked at each other silently for a while. Chi Heiran reached out to touch his little cheek, but Little Bear slapped Chi Heiran on the face in disgust. The whole small face was wrinkled, and he shrugged his nose in distaste, and turned to hide in his mother's arms. Chi Heiran's entire face changed. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 518. Chi Heiran was lucky, his feet spread out, his eyes stared at the couch. He just ignored his son, turned his head and asked, "Is this really the son of the master?" Mu Yangling personally twisted the towel and wiped his face. "Okay, don't you just dislike your dirty smell? What do you care about with him as an adult?" Chi Heiran's chest heaved, and he shouted, "He is the son of the master, and the master is in a hurry for 800 miles, and the rushes back every night just to see him. No matter how dirty or smelly, this brat dares to despise you." Chi Heiran gritted his teeth and said, "When he grows older, I will beat him so hard that I can't find his teeth all over the place. How dare I despise you?" Mu Yangling saw that Chi Heiran was completely caught up in the resentment that her son disliked him, and she was angry and funny in her heart. She directly pressed his head and wiped his face, saying, "Your son dislikes you, I don't dislike you. Hurry up and wipe your face, wash your hands. I asked the small kitchen to cook porridge for you." Chi Heiran said with disgust, "Master has been hungry for so long, so you can give me porridge, or some meat at least." "It's because I've been hungry for a long time that I want to drink porridge. First nourish my stomach, and then eat meat in 2 days." Mu Yangling pulled him aside and helped him wash his hands. Seeing that his clothes were too dirty, he looked for them from under the box. "Bring out a set of underwear, I made this for you, change it on first." Chi Heiran picked up his clothes and turned them inside and out in amazement. "I can see, you really did this." He touched the stitches and said, "Except for you, no one would use such thick stitches to do it clothing. Just be content with it. My craftsmanship is much better now. If you don't pay attention, who will find that my stitches are thicker than others?" Chi Heiran curled his lips, thinking that his wife's words were just deceiving him. Seeing this, Mu Yangling pulled back the clothes and said, "It's fine if you don't wear it, I won't give it to you." Chi Heiran hurriedly snatched the clothes over, staring and said, "If you don't give it to master, who else can you give it to?" "I'll give it to my dad." Chi Heiran thought about his father-in-law's tall and thick figure, curled his lips and said, "If you lie and don't make drafts, father-in-law won't be able to wear these clothes, and your mother-in-law makes clothes for father-in-law. Can your sewing work catch your eye? I don't mind it. If you want to change someone, you will die without wearing the clothes you made." He shook his head and went to the bathroom to take a shower, changed into white underwear and trousers and came out with loose hair. Mu Yangling took a towel and twisted his hair. Chi Heiran half leaned on the couch, his eyes narrowed slightly, and his consciousness was a little drowsy. Feeling the middle finger was a little warm, his vague consciousness came back in an instant, and he was about to use his hands subconsciously. Mu Yangling patted his shoulder with quick eyes and hands, and suddenly he couldn't use his hands. Only then did he see his son lying on his back. His hand was holding his fingers in his mouth. Chi Heiran broke out in a cold sweat. If Mu Yangling hadn't vented his strength just a step earlier, wouldn't his son have been thrown out by him? Looking at the soft and cute son, Chi Heiran was afraid for a while. He picked up his son and hugged him tightly on his stomach, and then patted his butt angrily. "Seeing you biting so much, I almost didn't scare my father die." Mu Yangling was also taken aback, and her hands were still a little weak. Fortunately, she had been paying attention to her son, and because she was helping Chi Heiran twist his hair, she was able to stop in time. Otherwise, Chi Heiran subconsciously raised his hand, and the child would have to fly. You can't go out. She leaned over and hugged Chi Heiran from behind, tears streaming down her cheeks. Chi Heiran felt guilty for a while hugging her son. He stretched out a hand to pat Mu Yangling's back. It's okay, it's okay, it's all Lord, it's not good, you beat me up to vent your anger. Mu Yangling shook his head slightly. You just came back from fighting for your life outside, this is all a subconscious action, it's not your fault. Chi Heiran kissed Mu Yangling's forehead, and said in a low voice, Master must be more careful in the future, and he will let go of his guard as soon as he returns home. He will never let such a thing happen again. The little bear didn't know that he had just walked through the life and death juncture. He expressed his dissatisfaction with his father's behavior of hugging him tightly, so he kept yelling AHH. The originally warm and affectionate atmosphere disappeared in an instant, and Chi Heiran, who was planning to have some tenderness with his wife, instantly became angry. He hugged his son close to him and asked eye to eye, before you thought your father was smelly, but now your father and I are clean, what else do you dislike? Little Bear stared blankly at his father for 2 seconds, then cried out with a wow. Chi Heiran was taken aback, and immediately stuffed it into Mu Yangling's arms in a hurry, stammering, I'm just talking about him. Want to scare him, why did he cry? Mu Yangling hurriedly hugged his son, and glared at him and said, aren't you very fierce just now? Chi Heiran cowardly said, isn't that because he is very obedient and doesn't know how to cry? It's the same as when I was a child. Mu Yangling didn't have time to talk about him, and carried the baby into the inner room to nurse. The little bear was also a little hungry, and stopped crying as soon as the food arrived, and sucked it like a war. Chi Heiran followed behind into the inner room, staring at his wife's chest dumbfounded. When he saw this, Mu Yangling looked up and saw that he also came in, blushed, and turned his back slightly. Why are you coming in? Hurry up, go out and wring your own hair. Chi Heiran swallowed a mouthful of saliva, sat directly beside Mu Yangling, looked forward with his head, and said in a low voice, let me see our son, I haven't seen him drink milk yet. Mu Yangling's face turned redder, but when he saw Chi Heiran staring blankly at his son, he felt that he was thinking too much. When Mu Yangling hesitated, Chi Heiran said in a low voice, I can only stay in the palace. One afternoon, this time because I just came back, the emperor gave me this grace, I don't know when I will see you two again next time. Mu Yangling's heart softened instantly, the couple had nothing to hide, she gritted her teeth and let Chi Heiran watch his son drink milk. Although she had done psychological training, Mu Yangling was still a little shy. As soon as the little bear was full, she immediately put the child into Chi Heiran's arms, and turned her back to fix the skirt of the shirt. Chi Heiran smacked his lips regretfully behind her, looked down at his son, saw his eyes narrowed slightly, and was yawning with clenched fists, looking at him with misty eyes. Chi Heiran's heart softened, and he nodded his little nose, said, Stinky boy, I knew I hated your father at a young age, will you pay it back in the future? When you grow up a bit, see if I don't spank your ass. The little bear only thought his father was talking to him, he opened his mouth twice, and then yawned again, his eyes were slightly moist, and gradually closed, his nostrils made a shallow breathing sound, and his abdomen rose and fell slightly, fell asleep like this. The soft, fragrant little ball nestled in his arms. Chi Heiran felt that all the hard work before had disappeared. He couldn't help but kissed his son on the forehead, and just hugged him like this. After tidying up his clothes, Mu Yangling asked him to put the child aside and go out to eat porridge first. Chi Heiran shook his head and said, I want to hold the child, you go and bring the porridge in to feed me. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu. Chapter 519. Looking at Chi Heiran, who was unwilling to leave her son for a while, Mu Yangling felt a little jealous for no reason. She pouted and turned around to get food. The maid serving her stood far away, while Li Chun and the servants serving her son stayed outside to listen to orders. When they saw Mu Yangling coming out, they hurried forward. "Fourth grandma. Bring me the porridge." Li Chun knew that Chi Heiran didn't like being served when he and Mu Yangling were together, so he turned around and handed the crock pot to Mu Yangling. Although those palace maids were curious that Li Chun and others would not come in to serve them, those who survived in the deep palace knew what to ask and what not to ask, so they hid their curiosity to death. Mu Yangling was sitting on the side of the bed, watching Chi Heiran coaxing his son, and kept stuffing porridge into his mouth. Mu Yangling looked at his sleeping son, then at Chi Heiran, who was humming softly and kept chanting, and couldn't help but whispered, "Stop coaxing him, he has already fallen asleep, don't wake him up in the end now, when will you come to coax him?" Chi Heiran pouted and muttered a few words, then put his son in his arms and did not move, and concentrated on eating porridge. But he was always picky when he asked people to feed him, and he said after a while, "Why is there such a little meat in this porridge? A little more over there, scoop that piece." At the beginning, Mu Yangling scooped it up for him according to his words, but in the end she completely ignored him, just scooped it up and stuffed it into his mouth. She said, "Anyway, you have to finish all these porridges." Chi Heiran muttered, "How can a pot of porridge be enough?" His stomach was very big, and back in his easy life, he felt that he could just swallow a pig now. "I know you're hungry, but you've suffered for so long before, how can you be full of fish and meat all at once? Your stomach will be ruined in the future." Chi Heiran hummed twice, hugged his son and lay down slightly. "Master wants to sleep for a while, wake me up when the time comes, I'll go with you to see my sister-in-law and Xiaobao." As soon as he finished speaking, Chi Heiran fell asleep soundly. Mu Yangling knew that he was tired, so he put the things out lightly, and then returned to the room, and saw that Chi Heiran was sleeping with his son slightly on his side, and Xiao Xiang was lying on his father's side with his arms and legs spread out, with a small mouth slightly opened, fell asleep whistling. Mu Yangling stood by the side for a while, and found that the breathing of the father and son was synchronized. Mu Yangling smiled slightly, and leaned against the side of the bed to watch them. He didn't know when he fell asleep against the bedpost. Chi Heiran had developed a biological clock early in the field. Although he was exhausted, he had only slept for an hour. He opened his eyes energetically. He first saw his son lying not far away, and then he saw his son leaning on him. Wife on the side of the bed. Chi Heiran hurriedly and carefully moved his son to the innermost place, then got up to lie down with his wife in his arms. Mu Yangling woke up as soon as he moved. She fell asleep sitting on the side of the bed and leaning back against the side of the bed. Now she felt a little uncomfortable in her neck, so Chi Heiran muttered, "The space in the bed is so big, why don't you knowing how to lie in it? It's really stupid. I didn't want to sleep, I just wanted to see you." Chi Heiran was overjoyed, and said triumphantly, "The master is here, you can look at it as you like." The corners of Mu Yangling's mouth twitched slightly, and he lay directly next to him, closing his eyes slightly and ignoring him. Chi Heiran looked at Mu Yangling for a while, probably thinking that his son was more attractive, and turned around to stare at his son again. Seeing that no one was paying attention in the room, he secretly stretched out his hand and pulled his son's legs apart, to see his. Mu Yangling just opened his eyes and was dumbfounded. Chi Heiran probably confirmed that it was his son, and with a deep smile on his mouth, he put down his legs contentedly. Just as Mu Yangling was about to ask him if he was patriarchal, he saw that he carefully placed his son's legs in a heart shape. Then gently put the son's open hand back to the child's own mouth. Mu Yangling closed his mouth and eyes. Well, this master is playing with his son. Little Bear probably felt uncomfortable in his sleeping position, his mouth pouted slightly, and his brows frowned slightly. Chi Heiran quickly arranged his legs and hands when he saw it, as if he had done something evil and was discovered by someone, clasping his hands on his chest, Close your eyes and pretend to sleep. Mu Yangling endured it, but in the end he couldn't hold back and gave him a kick, and said in a low voice, "You are not allowed to bully your son like this in the future, be careful that he will settle accounts with you when he grows up." Chi Heiran was a little guilty, but he still muttered, "I am his father, he dares." Mu Yangling snorted, "You are already an adult, why are you still acting like a child?" Mu Yangling stretched out his feet and beat his legs non-stop while talking. Chi Heiran grabbed her feet and turned slightly sideways to face Mu Yangling, "I just want to play with him to make sure if he is my son." Mu Yangling was taken aback for a moment, then exerted force on his foot and slapped him with his hand, and said angrily, "What do you mean? Whose son am I? Not your son." Chi Heiran didn't realize that he had said the wrong thing, but he said with emotion, "Master, I just thought it was amazing. When I left, your stomach was only so small, and when you came back, your son was already so big." Chi Heiran felt a little guilty when he said this. He hugged Mu Yangling and said, "My father was not there when you gave birth, and my father didn't participate when the child grew up." Mu Yang calmed down a bit, thought for a while and said, "You have no other choice, we're going to fight because of whoever told us." Chi Heiran squeezed Mu Yangling's hand without saying a word. Mu Yangling was lying quietly in his arms, just about to enjoy this moment of tranquility, when someone's hand became dishonest. Mu Yangling closed his eyes slightly and pretended not to see him. Seeing that he was going too far, he couldn't help but grabbed his hand that had slipped into his clothes and said, "Don't make trouble, this is the backyard of the palace, do you want to kill yourself?" The emperor allowed Chi Heiran to visit them, but he would definitely not allow Chi Heiran to do such things in the harem, even if they were husband and wife. Chi Heiran bit her ear and said, "The maids are all outside, you just need to keep your voice down, there is still water in the bathroom." Mu Yangling didn't want to take the risk, so he patted and pushed the person away slightly, and his breathing was a little short. "Don't mess around, be careful that the emperor won't let you come to see us next time." Chi Heiran paused, then squeezed his hand slightly, hugged Mu Yangling tightly in his arms with red eyes, and said in a low voice, "I just feel uncomfortable." Mu Yangling gasped, but seeing Chi Heiran was so reluctant to blame him, she hesitated for a moment, then groped under him. Now it was Chi Heiran's turn to gasp. Chi Heiran hugged Mu Yangling excitedly, and whispered emotionally in her ear, "Aling, Aling." Mu Yangling's face was red and her ears were red, and the movements of her hands were a little clumsy, so Chi Heiran covered her hands and guided her. When Mu Yangling's hands were sore, Chi Heiran finally let it out. He lay on the bed for a while, then went to the bathroom to wash up refreshed. Mu Yangling's face was red, and he secretly opened the window and opened the room. The smell goes out. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 520. Li Jinghua knew that the husband and wife must have a lot to talk about when they got together, so they hid in their room and did not come out until Li Shun came to invite them to bring Xiaobao there. Chi Heiran changed into that tattered set of clothes again, otherwise it would be too indecent to see his brother and sister-in-law wearing an underwear. Although the clothes were not too strong, it was still a coat. Chi Heiran's clothes were too dirty. With his son as an example, he didn't dare to step forward to ask for Xiaobao to be hugged. He just stood aside and teased him with a few words, then raised his head and said a few simple words to Li Jinghua. Li Jinghua mainly wanted to know the news about Qi Ziyuan. They lived in the palace, and the news they got was what the emperor or others wanted them to know, but they didn't know the real situation, which was equivalent to being blind. Chi Heiran was called into the palace as soon as he went back and forth, and he didn't know about his elder brother's news, but since he didn't receive any news, it meant that there should be no problem with his elder brother, so he told Li Jinghua confidently that his elder brother was fine. Li Jinghua felt relieved and thought for a while. Seeing that they were the only ones in the room, she still couldn't help asking in a low voice, "Fourth uncle, I don't know when we will be able to leave the palace and go home, It's not convenient to always live in the palace. Chi Heiran said with a serious face, I was just going to tell my sister-in-law, it's safer for you to live in the palace during this time. He told Xixia's assassination plan. Chi Heiran said in a low voice, although the emperor called you into the palace with the intention of taking hostages, I still have to thank him. The Xixia soldiers who took the assassination mission were elites. I am terrified, I am afraid that I will come back late, although there are many inconveniences in the palace, but as long as my elder brother and I are still loyal to Dejo, the emperor will try his best to protect you from any danger. Li Jinghua didn't expect such danger outside the palace, she was stunned for a moment. Chi Heiran can't stay in the palace for too long, this time is an exception, seeing that the servants outside have gone back and forth several times, he got up and said, Sister-in-law, it's getting late today, I'll leave the palace first, if there is anything necessary or inconvenient, just ask the palace servants to send me a message, and I will get it for you. Li Jinghua nodded slightly, and looked at Mu Yangling, Ling, send forth uncle out, I'll watch over the child for you. Mu Yangling sent Chi Heiran to the gate of Erdeo Palace all the way. When Chi Heiran saw the servants and maids following from afar, he gently hugged Mu Yangling and whispered in her ear, don't worry, don't worry. If something happens, I will definitely rescue you before then. Mu Yangling nodded slightly, and smiled formally into his eyes, I'm very relieved. Chi Heiran just laughed, yes, Ling has always believed in him wholeheartedly. Take care of sister-in-law and Xiaobao more. Mu Yangling nodded. Only then did Chi Heiran turn around and stride away. Mu Yangling stood at the door until his back completely disappeared, then turned around and went back slowly. The young couple is still sad about parting again, and the palace has refreshed their understanding of their love. Many women are envious and jealous of Mu Yangling, it's really luck. These women included not only court ladies, but also concubines and officials detained in the harem. Even the empress felt sour. The next day, I specially asked someone to call Mu Yangling to come to talk to me. Seeing that she was still sitting quietly as before, she would only answer when asked her questions. Obviously she had released her kindness, but she would not. Flattery is far worse than her slick sister-in-law. How can such a woman get so much favor from her husband? Could it be because of the newlyweds? But they have been married for more than 2 years, and the newlyweds have passed long ago. It was also easier for her to marry the emperor, but it is impossible to be this good. You can refuse the marriage offered by the Holy Majesty for her, and show your intimacy in public for her. It seems that the problem lies with the man, maybe it is a man's root problem. Other women were also observing Mu Yangling, and finally came to the conclusion that Mu Yangling had no other great advantages except for his pretty appearance, and the most indispensable thing in the world was a beautiful woman, and it seemed that he was indeed a man. The problem is not that they are not good enough. This made everyone focus on the man of the Qi family, only to find that there really seemed to be some genetic factor. Qi Feng also couldn't forget his first love cousin, and finally took the risk of offending the Yu family to accept her as a concubine. Will he be righted less than half a year after the death of his original partner? This should be regarded as affectionate, right? And Qi Ziyuan also seems to value his wife very much, and he has never heard that he has a concubine or a concubine left in Jingzhou Mansion. It can be seen that the men of the Qi family are indeed more affectionate, so everyone envied Mu Yangling instead. Lucky. Li Jinghua was well informed. After coming back from the outside, she bent over with laughter and told Mu Yangling the matter as a joke. She made fun of her and said, I said, why did the queen ask you to go there 2 days ago? The female relatives of the other 3 families I always look at you, and ask me about you from time to time, even other concubines in the harem will come to the queen to see us, so the root cause lies in you. Mu Yangling said displeased, they are too gossip, and it's not the root of the Qi family that Heiran is close to me, okay. I give him my wholeheartedness, and he will naturally repay my wholeheartedness, and have half a penny with my father-in-law. Relationship. It's absurd to associate our husband and wife's affairs with the father-in-law's doting on his concubine and destroying his wife. I give him my heart and soul, so he will return my heart and soul. Li Jinghua lowered her head and muttered twice, then raised her head and said with a smile, only you can say that. Men are so fickle in this world, and women are so cruel in this world. How unfair it is, there are so few who can do this like Uncle Fourth. Aling, you are lucky to meet you. Mu Yangling opened his mouth and could only murmur, my father is also like this. Li Jinghua smiled, so you mother and daughter are very lucky. Mu Yangling still didn't dare to say that Qi Ziyuan could do this, because although Qi Ziyuan didn't have a concubine's room, he did have a concubine's room, and Li Jinghua also arranged for him to have a concubine's room before coming to Anken. Li Jinghua knew what Mu Yangling was thinking, patted her hand and said with a smile, actually, I am much luckier than most women. Although I am not as good as you, I am very satisfied. Because of how much Qi Ziyuan valued her, and because Qi Ziyuan has never taken a concubine to have a concubine, for her, this is enough. Women generally envy Mu Yangling, while men generally look down on Qi Heiran, thinking that this man is too affectionate. The emperor also thought so. Qi Heiran's words and deeds in the harem would naturally be known to him, so when Qi Heiran left, the emperor also officially labeled him as too affectionate. However, there is nothing wrong with being courtiers and sons and daughters. The emperor hopes that Qi Heiran's eldest brother will also have this, so that he can feel more at ease. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 521. Although the imperial court tried very hard to restore order, the situation was still gradually deteriorating. Not long after Qi Heiran came back, Jingzhou Mansion on the East Road and Jiading Mansion on the West Road fell one after another, and South Jing South Road was completely occupied by rebels. The bandits have formed an alliance and are heading towards Linen City. The vanguard has already arrived at Longxing Mansion. It only takes 12 days to march from Longxing Mansion to Linen City, 3 days if it is cavalry, 2 days if it is a single person galloping with 2 horses. Emperor Jinjian became flustered like never before, but the court had no one to use. All available generals were sent out, and Emperor Jingyan had to consider using Qi Heiran. But Qi Ziyuan already had an army of 150,000 in his hands, and he was far away at the border. It would be too dangerous to hand over part of the forbidden army to Qi Heiran. When Qi Heiran came back, he didn't intend to let him go out of Beijing again. Taifu Yan dragged his sick body tremblingly into the palace, and begged, "My lord, this is not the time to hesitate. Brother Qi Ziyuan's family members are in the palace, and Qi Heiran values his wife and children very much. Hold Brother Qi Ziyuan." Taifu Yan shouted urgently, "Your Majesty, the great Zhou dynasty is in danger, and we cannot hesitate any longer." The emperor took a deep breath and order Qi Heiran as the general to suppress the bandits, lead 20,000 forbidden troops and 30,000 local troops, and go to Longxing Mansion immediately. Taifu Yan breathed a sigh of relief, but Emperor Jinjian was exhausted. "Teacher, even if we defend the Longxing Mansion, there is the kingdom of Jin in the north and Zixia in the west, and it is difficult for me to protect Dazhu." The teacher said, "What should I do?" It was rare for Emperor Jinjian to cover his face and cry. Eunuch Bai's eyes darkened, he hurriedly waved all the servants out, and he also left quietly, closed the door, and guarded outside the gate. Taifu Yan looked at the emperor for a while with cloudy eyes, and finally sighed slightly. He is 68 years old this year, and he can feel the limit. He sat on the steps tremblingly, looking at the pillar not far away. Days. Emperor Jinjian walked to Taifu Yan's side and joined him on the same level. "Teacher, please show the students another way." Teifu Yan smiled wryly. At this time, he couldn't help feeling resentful towards Emperor Jinjian, and he blurted out the question, "Will you do as I tell you?" Emperor Jingyan's eyes darkened, and he nodded slightly after a while, "As long as the teacher says, the students must follow." Teifu Yan's cloudy eyes shot out a sharp light, he turned his head to look at the emperor beside him, his chest heaved with anger, but he couldn't vent that anger, looking at the emperor with reddish eyes, all the anger melted made helpless. "This is my student, and the emperor who pushed God to the throne by himself. He has been the emperor for more than 20 years. He is no longer the little prince who was respectful but not intelligent but treated people sincerely. An emperor should have a little bit of ambition and suspicion, not a lot, but his ingenuity didn't increase by a single bit, but he looked extremely stupid because of his inconsistent ambition and suspicion, but wasn't he the one who caused all this? If he had chosen the vigorous sixth prince back then, would the situation have been better?" Teifu Yan shook his head slightly, "Not necessarily, everything is not certain. How is it so simple to manage a country? The sixth prince is ambitious and smart enough, but too hard-edged, has too much opinion on the family and the powerful. It may not be possible to ascend the throne. He did a better job than Emperor Jinjian." Thinking about it, Teifu Yan felt a little better. Teifu Yan's thoughts fluctuated, and he was silent for a long time. If the other party's eyes were not still open, the emperor would have thought he was asleep. Just when Emperor Jingyan couldn't help urging him again, Teifu Yan said awkwardly, "Let's make peace." Emperor Jingyan's heart skipped a beat, and he asked expectantly, "Teacher is talking about negotiating peace with the rebels?" There was a mocking smile on the corner of Teifu Yan's mouth, and he asked back, "The emperor wants to negotiate peace with the rebels?" Emperor Jinjian was silent, knowing that he had provoked Teifu Yan. Teifu Yan reached out and grabbed the railing on his right, stood up tremblingly, and said with some crying, "Negotiate peace with Jingguo and Zixia." After finishing speaking, tears fell from Teifu Yan's eyes, and fell drop by drop on the smooth floor of the palace. Emperor Jinjian felt a pain in his heart, opened his mouth, but couldn't utter a single syllable. Teifu Yan obviously didn't want to hear what the emperor said anymore. He walked out step by step, tears fell like pearls with a broken thread. He opened the gate with both hands. Eunuch Bai, who was standing outside, turned his head when he heard the sound, and looked. The red-eyed and tearful Teifu Yan was startled, and then cautiously stepped forward and asked, "Teacher Yan, what's wrong with you?" Teifu Yan stared at Eunuch Bai for a moment, then turned his head, pushed him aside, and walked out step by step. Eunuch Bai was taken aback. He hurriedly stepped forward to hold his arm, and shouted, "Oh, what's wrong with you, Mrs. Yan? Miscellaneous family asked Bulletin Huo to carry you." Teifu Yan waved him away and said in a hoarse voice, "No need." With so much strength, he directly swung Eunuch Bai back 3 steps. Eunuch Bai didn't expect the elderly and seriously ill Teifu Yan to have such great strength. He was very surprised. In this dazed effort, Teifu Yan has already taken several steps. Knowing that the other party was stubborn, Eunuch Bai didn't dare to go forward and ask the other party to sit down, but called 2 servants and 2 guards to follow behind, and if Teifu Yan was too weak, he would immediately catch him. Teifu Yan seemed to be completely unaware of the people and things behind him. He just walked out step by step. Eunuch Bai looked from behind and felt that Teifu Yan's back was bent a lot. As soon as the idea came up, Eunuch Bai laughed at himself. It is normal for Teifu Yan to bend his back at such an old age. Eunuch Bai turned back to the palace, but as soon as one leg stepped over the threshold, a cup flew towards his head. Eunuch Bai did not dare to hide. He could only lower his head slightly, letting the cup fly over his head. The emperor's majestic scolding sounded, "Get out." Frightened, Eunuch Bai backed out of the door and closed the door again. On this day, Teifu Yan walked from the Chongzheng Palace to the gate of the Imperial Palace alone. The officials who came and went to report matters were slightly surprised when they saw this, and then stood aside respectfully to salute. Taifu Yan walked in front of them step by step as if he didn't see them pass. Although everyone was astonished, they only thought that Taifu Yan was worried about the current situation. After a long time, the officials who had seen the scene realized in retrospect how heartbroken Taifu Yan was at that time. Taifu Yan staggered to the gate of the palace, the guards saw him crumbling, and hurried forward to support him, but was pushed away by Taifu Yan. He walked out of the palace almost masochistically. The head of the Yan family caught him crumbling body, couldn't help complaining in a low voice, "Old master, why did the emperor let you come out? You must know that since Taifu Yan got old, every time he entered the palace, as the emperor's teacher, he could always take a step or a soft sedan chair." Taifu Yan didn't answer, but supported the hand of the chief manager, turned around and looked up at the palace city. His eyes were full of sadness. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 522. Yan Du knelt in front of Taifu Yan's bed, kowtowed bang bang, and cried, "Father, you are making the Yan family bear the eternal infamy." Taifu Yan's chest heaved sharply, then calmed down, and finally returned to dead silence. He turned his head to look at Yan Du, and said stubbornly, "Go get the pen, ink, paper, and inkstone." Yan Du bit his lip and knelt down. Taifu Yan pointed at him angrily and shouted, "Even you don't listen to me. Father, if you want the entire Yan family to be buried, even if the son has resentment in his heart, he will not dare to refute it. The first one to drink the dove will be the son. However, if this paper cannot be published, you will kill the son. My son can't let you write this letter. My son dare not go down to see the ancestors, dare not go to see Emperor Sejong." Yan Du moaned, his head hit the ground with a bang bang, blood slid down his face from his forehead. Taifu Yan spat out a mouthful of blood, pointed at his son and was speechless. After a while, he held his chest and panted, you think I'm willing to bear such a bad name? You think I just want to push the Yan family away, going down the abyss? Emperor Jinjian, it was you who pushed me up. But this Jiangshan's surname is Guo, not Yan." Yan Du roared angrily. If he had listened to his father long ago, why did De Zhou end up here? He wants to listen to you now, and you are responsible. What did he do 20 years ago? Taifu Yan's eyes were dark. Yan Du looked back at his father's gaze without fear, and knelt firmly on the ground without flinching. Taifu Yan sighed and said, "If the peace talks are successful, the great Zhou can continue." Yan Du laughed mockingly, "It's just lingering. As long as the green hills are left, there is a possibility of a resurgence." Taifu Yan's voice was barely audible. "The emperor is old, and the princes are also old. You must keep your eyes open and don't follow father's lead old road." Yan Du burst into tears. "Father, how much is left of De Zhou? If De Zhou can't be kept, the Yan family will really bear the infamy of treason forever. My son dare not gamble. Besides, among the few princes, who do you think has the power to turn the tide? It's better to let the day turn around. Maybe you can keep the Han family's country, and it won't fall to the Hu family. Man's hand." Yan Du swallowed the last sentence, but the meaning was revealed. Taifu Yan stared at Zhang Ding with his eyes open and did not speak. Neither father nor son could convince the other that night. Mrs. Yan was running around in a hurry outside, and when she saw her son Yan Fu sitting on the steps in a daze, she was annoyed. "What's wrong with you? Just tell me, don't make me worry. Your father and your grandfather frozen inside, why are you just sitting there motionless?" Yan Fu lowered his eyes and smiled self-deprecatingly. Madame Yan slapped him angrily when she saw her. "What's wrong with you three?" Yan Fu laughed out loud, with tears overflowing his eyes. He looked at his mother fixedly, and said, "Mother, in a few days, the Yan family will no longer be a model of scholarly transmission of etiquette." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Mrs. Yan was taken aback, and shouted, "Our Yan family is very strict in family management, and we never do anything that violates the law or discipline. If you dare to talk nonsense, mother will tell your father to ask the family law to teach you. Whatever you want. Yanfu got up and walked out. You can also persuade father, don't kneel, it's useless to knock, and no one can persuade grandfather to make up his mind. Yanfu stumbled out, laughing loudly as he walked. My Yan family is a master of poetry and calligraphy. Bad news came back to Linen City one after another. Except for the north, where General Yuan and Chi Ziyuan held the line of defense, the other places were all bad news. The city was being lost every day, and the faces of the officials became more and more serious. No more smiles, even the officials and family members fell silent, waiting for the news from the front with trepidation. Chi Heiran has already led his troops out of the city to Longxing Mansion. Yan Du asked for leave to take care of the sick at home, but Yanfu didn't ask for leave at all, and just absent from work, which surprised his Shangfeng and his colleagues. Because Yanfu is a good young man, he works very hard, and he rarely asks for leave, let alone absenteeism like this. But thinking of the imperial physicians that the emperor has been sending to Yan's family these days, everyone thinks they understand. Teifu Yan is really not well. It's really raining when the house leaks. Losing a veteran of the three dynasties at such a critical time is also a big blow to Dezhou. At this time, the Yan family. Teifu Yan was lying on the bed weakly. He looked seriously at the eldest son and grandson who were kneeling underneath, and said after a while, this should be my last wish. Yan Du sat paralyzed on the ground, and asked with red eyes, don't father think about it for the Yan family. Loyalty and filial piety have been difficult to achieve both in ancient times. You just think I'm an unfilial person, go get the pen and ink. Yanfu raised his head in a grandfather, you are only loyal to Emperor Jinjian, not to Zhou, let alone this country. Shut up, Teifu Yan blushed, annoyed, bring the pen and ink. Yan Du kowtowed deeply to him, finally overwhelmed the family responsibility in his heart, got up and took the pen, ink, and paper, and set up a low table on the bed. Yanfu knelt down from the beginning to the end, looking at his grandfather and father with red eyes. Teifu Yan's hands trembled slightly, but he still picked up the pen and dropped it on the paper. He wanted to write 2 notebooks and 1 letter. One letter advocated peace talks with the Xixia and Jin kingdoms, stating the pros and cons, and 1 letter wrote down the bottom line of the peace talks. Although he agreed to the peace talks, he didn't want to hand over the bottom terms to Emperor Jinjian. He was afraid that the Great Zhou would it really fell apart after that. The most embarrassing thing for Teifu Yan was the letter to General Yuan. He knows and understands General Yuan's ambition, because he is half of his student, and it is his dream to regain the lost land. He always wants to regain his homeland in his dreams. He always thought that one day General Yuan would realize this dream for him. So he defended him a lot in court, and even tried his best to support him. But now, it was up to him to persuade General Yuan to agree to the peace talks. Teifu Yan felt that the previous 2 documents were even more difficult. Just as he understood General Yuan's ambition, Teifu Yan also understood General Yuan's stubbornness. In some respects, he was as stubborn as a cow, and he would never turn back even if he was beaten to pieces. Teifu Yan has been thinking about these things for the past 3 days, and he wrote very quickly, but he finished it in an hour. After he made the last stroke, all the strength in his body seemed to be drained and he fell on the bed. Yan Du was shocked, father. Yan Du climbed onto the bed in a panic to support his father, and Yanfu also rolled up and hugged Teifu Yan's arm. Even if he was angry with him again, this man was also their father/grandfather. How could it be possible that there was only resentment at all since they were young? Teifu Yan was short of breath, tightly grasping Yan Du's hand and said, "Father, I'm sorry for you, but I have to do it. You hand it over for me. If you don't want to be an official, then just resign, go back as an official, or be a villager." Taifu Yan loosened his grip on Yan Du's hand, slowly closed his eyes, and his chest never rose again. Father! Grandfather! Yan Fu hugged his grandfather's body and shouted, "Where is the imperial doctor? Call the imperial doctor!" Yan Du hugged his father and cried like a child, screaming in grief and indignation. The imperial physician who came in felt Taifu Yan's pulse, and shook his head regretfully.